Over already? 15? Zoo Crew! Volleyball is just about the only sport with this one particular quirk in its scoring, so today we're going to fix it. Welcome to the SportsZu. Zoo Crew, welcome back! Today starts our Olympic sports series. We're going to talk about an Olympic sport, specifically the Summer Olympics, throughout the months of June and July. So today we will kick it off with volleyball. And since I invoked the word volleyball, I have to, contractually, as a University of Pittsburgh grad, point to this shot right here. Okay, Kat, I think I got that. Now that it's out of the way, let's continue. So, Olympic volleyball has been part of the Summer Olympics ever since 1964 for both men and women's teams. In 1964, there were 10 men's teams and 6 women's teams, and they simply played a round robin where each team played every other team one time, and whoever had the best record at the end was declared the gold medal winner. In 1968, 2 more women's teams joined to have 8 teams, and then in 1972, the men added 2 teams to get to 12 teams. And also in 1972, both the men and the women had 2 pools of teams, with the top 2 teams in each pool then going to the semifinals, where it was a knockout bracket to get a gold medal winner. In 1976, for some reason, 2 men's teams dropped out and we were down to 10 teams. But after several years, in 1988, we were right back to 12 teams. In 1992, for the men, we had 4 teams instead of just 2 teams move on out of the pool stage and into the knockout round, so thus we had 8 teams in the quarterfinals. On the women's side, we had 3 teams advance out of the pool stage, and therefore there were 2 teams that had a bye in the final 6 to go to the semifinals. Then in 1996, both the men's and the women's teams had 12 teams for both genders, and 4 teams advanced out of each pool into the quarterfinals. Ever since then, we've had that same format, but there has been one change for 2024, which we will talk about a little bit later. More importantly, let's talk about the changes in the scoring format. So, volleyball traditionally had a side-out scoring format, where only the team that served the ball was able to get a point. Thus, a side-out is the receiving team, aka the team that's not serving, team wins a rally and gains the right to serve, and then only once they have achieved the serve were they able to then gain a point on the next rally. Side-out scoring was the primary scoring system in volleyball through 1999, but starting with the 2000 Olympics, rally point scoring became the new standard scoring format. So briefly, here's how scoring went through Olympic history. From 1964 through 1988, we had side-out scoring only, and each set went to 15 points with 2 points clear to win a set, which in normal parlance just means you had to win by 2 to win the set. Then in 1992, 2 pretty big changes were made. First, sets were capped at 17 points per set. So if a set got to 16-16, we were no longer winning by 2. It was just whoever got the next point and got to 17-16 would win the point, and the set. Also in 1992, the 5th set only switched from side-out scoring to rally scoring. And rally scoring simply means whichever team wins the rally wins the point. Then in 1996, they removed the 17-point cap for the 5th set rally scoring only. Obviously, there are a lot more points gathered more quickly in rally scoring, so that issue was taken away for the 5th set. Then the big change came, as we just talked about, in 2000 all the way through the present. Rally scoring is implemented for all sets, and 25 points instead of 15 points are used per set, with, again, the 2 points cleared to win the set. However, the fifth set was unchanged from 1992 and 1996, such that the fifth set only goes to 15 points per set, again with 2 points clear to win the set. Then in 2016, the only change was that replay challenges were added. Now, the USA Volleyball Commission stated that the change in the scoring system to all rally scoring will enable tournament organizers to better project match time requirements, since the average time of each set and match will be more predictable. And the NBC Olympics page states the following advantages for rally point scoring. One, it's designed to make scoring easier to follow, and two, it is to make games faster and more exciting. Well, let's talk about those briefly. Easier, yes, I guess because you can have a goldfish memory and not remember who's serving, but by the end of the rally, whoever wins the rally wins the point. So you don't have to remember who was scoring. So yeah, I guess it is a little bit easier in that respect. More exciting? Sure, I guess as you get more points more quickly, I guess that's a little bit more exciting. But faster, I think we need to go in more depth into that particular point. So here's a chart for each year of Olympic volleyball showing the length of time per match for both men's and women's volleyball, broken down by the number of sets played. So obviously 3-set matches would be shorter than 4-set matches, and 4-set matches are shorter than 5-set matches. And we've color-coded this such that the matches in side-out scoring are highlighted in orange, and the matches in rally point scoring are highlighted in green. So let's talk about this in more depth. So let's look at a line graph here for the lengths of men's Olympic volleyball matches, and you can see that there are several different colors here. One color for each length of match, one for 3-set matches, one for 4, one for 5, and then the light blue is for all matches. Now, I don't think that is a particularly relevant indicator for our purposes today, only because each year it could vary on how many matches went to 3 sets only, and maybe one year had a whole bunch of matches going to 5 sets. So I guess it does average out over time, but as a year-to-year basis, not particularly noteworthy. So we'll focus on 3-set matches, how they changed in length over time, and then the same for 4-set matches, and then for 5-set matches. And then the same here, you can see this is for women's Olympic volleyball matches. You can see there are a couple broken spots here where we were unable to get the data for lengths of matches. So let's first talk about the average lengths of 3-set matches. First, for the men, for all years, 3-set matches averaged 76.21 minutes per match. But I will note here there was limited data for 1988, so that will be the same for all 3 lengths of matches. For side-out scoring, 1964 through 1996, the average length of match was 71.45 minutes. And then from 2000 to 2020, rally scoring was 79.30 minutes. So that right there, right off the bat, goes against what was just said by NBC Olympics, as these matches were not in fact faster. And we're going to see that several times here. But I do also want to note here, 2020 Olympics were delayed for COVID. They did not actually take place until 2021, but the IOC is still officially calling that the 2020 Olympics, so that's what we're going to go by here. Now for women's matches, you can see similarly, all years 68.90 minutes per match, but we have no data for both 1976 as well as 1988. Then for side-out scoring, 63.78 minutes, and rally scoring, 74.87 minutes. So again, rally scoring is not saving us any time here, like we might initially would have guessed. For 4-set matches, we will see something very similar. And you can see here for men, for side-out scoring, we were over 106 minutes, and for rally scoring, almost 112 minutes. And for women, side-out scoring, almost 96.5 minutes, and for rally scoring, just over 107 minutes. Lastly, for 5-set matches, we do have side-out scoring being slightly longer for men here, 103.08 minutes, where rally scoring is 128.26 minutes. But for women, we still have rally scoring taking a longer amount of time, with side-out scoring going almost to 121 minutes, while rally scoring is about 127.5 minutes. So match length notes, rally scoring does have a higher average match length in 5 of the 6 data points. Only the men's 5-set matches were higher for side-out scoring. Now, why would that be? Let's think about the types of scoring and why this happened. So from 1964 to 88, we used full side-out scoring. So even the 5th set, all the way through 1988, we had those 5th sets use the side-out system. So getting to 15 minutes there still took an awfully long time. And we'll see that 1964 in particular had extremely long 5th sets. I'm not sure how that was reconciled after 1964, but for some reason those 5th sets in that very first Olympics were incredibly long. So with the 5th set scoring still being side-out scoring for 7 of the 9 Olympics in the side-out scoring era, it contributed enough to keep side-out scoring as more lengthy than rally scoring. But what happened for the other 5 data points that we talked about? Let's take an in-depth look at a couple years in particular. Let's start with 1992. It was the first Olympics with the 17-point cap and with 5th set rally point scoring. 3 and 4 set matches still went up by about 6 minutes from 1984 and about 14 minutes from 1988. But 3-set matches went down by over 11 minutes for women, but 4-set matches went up. Now both of those were from 1984. As we noted, we had no records from 1988. 5-set matches, however, fell by 9.5 minutes from 1984 for men, but still rose by a half a minute for women. But we will put in a little caveat here for the 1992 data. The 17-point cap that we talked about only affected 3 men's matches in 1992. And again, these are 17 to 16 sets. And 2 of those 3 were in the 5th set. So those are rally scoring 17 to 16s, not side-out scoring 17 to 16s. Then on top of that, for women, there were 0 matches that had a single 17 to 16 set. So amongst the side-out scoring between men and women, we still only had 1 data point that was a side-out scoring 17 to 16 set. Next, let's go to the next Olympics in 1996. We saw no rule changes, but there was still a very large increase in the average match length for men. For 3-set matches, there was a 16.49 minutes per match increase, and this remains the longest 3-set match length. For 4-set matches, there was an increase by 7.74 minutes per match, which is still the second longest 4-set match length, behind only 2020. And for 5th set, it increased by 20.10 minutes per match from 92. And this was the 3rd longest 5-set game length, behind that very long 1964 and the most recent Olympics in 2020. On the women's side, this was the first time that the field expanded from 8 teams to 12 teams. But the results were similar to the men's matches in that 3-set matches increased by 16.4 minutes per match, 4-set matches increased by 1.65 minutes per match, and 5-set matches increased by 12.4 minutes per match. The very next Olympics was 2000, and it was the first one with the full rally scoring. As you would have thought, this particular instance clearly had the intended effect of dramatically decreasing the match lengths. It was also the first match with a libero, which we don't need to go into too many details, but the libero is a defensive specialist who stays in the back row the whole time and cannot do offensive attacks. So they're purely for defensive purposes. So a better defensive player is going to save some rallies and make them go longer. For 3-set matches, the men dropped 29.37 minutes per match. Women dropped 12.73 minutes per match. For 4-set matches, men dropped 35.62 minutes per match, and the women dropped 15.33 minutes per match. And then for the 5th set, the men dropped an average of 34.74 minutes per match, and the women dropped an average of 30.69 minutes per match. I don't know about you, as I'm not so great at statistical significance, so that's why we're just going to call those very large drops in amounts of time but that certainly seems like something was really happening. And so the rally point scoring surely made a big difference, as well as the introduction of the libero. But let's take a look here at one specific line graph, only for data points in the rally point scoring era starting in 2000. You can see here the match lengths dramatically increased between the 2000 Olympics to the 2004 Olympics, hence why we have a vertical blue line there. And then they remained more or less the same from 2004 to 2016. And then we saw a huge increase in time again for the 2020 Olympics. So let's talk about what happened in 2020 specifically. For men's matches, the average length of match beat the rally point scoring record from 2012 by 6.98 minutes per match, all the way to 91.94 minutes per match for a 3-set match. Similarly, for women, their match length beat the record from 2012 by 1.65 minutes per match. For 4-set matches, again, same thing. Men beat the 2012 record by 18.10 minutes per match, while the women beat the 2012 record by 2 minutes per match. And then in 5-set matches, the men beat the 2012 record by 17.49 minutes per match, going over 2.5 hours to 153.09 minutes per match. On the women's side, again, beat the previous record from 2012 by 3.38 minutes per match. So all 6 data points, we saw new record matches in the rally point scoring era. Now for the men's side, these were the longest 4- and 5-set matches in Olympic history. In 1964, the 5-set matches averaged 148.08 minutes per match, and it included a single match that lasted 3 whole hours, clocking in at exactly 180 minutes. In 2020, however, the longest 5-set match was a little bit shorter still at 170 minutes, but the shortest was 142 minutes. In addition, this was the second longest average 3-set matches in Olympic history, behind just 1996, right before we switched over to rally point scoring. And in fact, 2020's 3-set matches were longer than the year 2000's 4-set matches. Pretty incredible that 3-set matches are now taking longer than 4-set matches. On the women's side, these were the longest 3- and 4-set matches in Olympic history, and also the second longest 5-set matches behind just 1972. Now let's break it down a little bit further. We'll leave match length comparisons and go to set length comparisons. Now the earliest we were able to do this was for the 2004 matches, and this is only for the men's side. For 2004, set 1 averaged 23.5 minutes, set 2 averaged 25.05 minutes, and set 3 averaged 24.37 minutes. So in sets 1 through 3, the average set lasted 24.31 minutes. In set 4 by itself, it averaged 26.36 minutes, and for sets 1 through 4 together, their average was then 24.64 minutes per match. And in set 5, since those only go to 15 points, the set length is a little shorter, and that clocked in at 19.38 minutes per match. Now let's compare that to 2020. Set 1, you can see 28.61 minutes per set. Set 2, 29.95 minutes per set. And for set 3, 29.89 minutes per match, and so forth, just like we looked at for 2004. Nonetheless, all across the board, all of them longer. As we can see here, the differences. Set 1, 5.11 minutes longer in 2020 than in 2004. And it varies a little bit between sets, but at the end of the day, it looks to be around a 5-minute difference longer per set between sets 1 through 4, and then 1.44 minutes longer in 2020 for set 5. So what are some possible explanations for the set length differences? What I did here was looked at a P. Kountoris et al. Article called Time Characteristics of 4 Consecutive Olympic Volleyball Games After the Implementation of the New Regulations. That was published in the Journal of Physical Activity, Nutrition, and Rehabilitation. And what the Kountoris article did was examine each of the Olympics between 2000 and 2012. And he noted that all matches were played with the exact same regulations. There were no changes in the break times between sets or the length of timeouts. The timeouts were 2 per team per set and last for 30 seconds each. And for technical timeouts, there are 2 per set during sets 1 through 4, which occur after the leading team reaches 8 points and after the leading team reaches 16 points. These technical timeouts last for 60 seconds. Also, there's a standard 3-minute break between sets. Now, one difference is that there does seem to be a longer break between the second and third sets when the two sides switch sides of the net. And the standard for that seems to be 5 minutes, though I didn't go back and see anything guaranteed on that. So, the Kuhn-Torres article used an ANOVA analysis, and they determined that match durations significantly increased, particularly between 2000 and 2004, and between 2008 and 2012. He noted that although set durations increased during this time, that the average total number of rallies remained practically the same across these 4 Olympics. For men, the average was 45 rallies in sets 1 through 4 and 29 rallies in set 5. So their conclusion was that there was a significant increase in rally duration. With all other variables remaining the same, the only potential difference was an increase in rally duration. So the average time between 2 consecutive serves increased from 28.9 seconds to 35.3 seconds, which is a 6.4 second increase on the men's side, and then from 29.1 seconds to 35.3 seconds, or 6.2 seconds for the women's side. Again, 2 consecutive serves mean you have a serve, then the rally goes as long as it goes, then the next serve gets ready to take place, and then the serve is hit. So that's where you get the 28 or 29 seconds, and then the 35.3 seconds. A second article, the FIVB, which is the International Federation of Volleyball, did a separate study just for the 2016 Olympics discussing rally durations. So they differentiated rallies from pseudo-rallies for the purposes of their survey. A pseudo-rally is a rally where there's a serve followed by a rapid point or a direct mistake. Now this could either be an ace serve where the receiving team is unable to get the ball back across the net, or a serve error where there's nothing for the receiving team to even hit over the net. And in either of these scenarios, the rally takes less than 1 second to complete. So men's rallies, they averaged 5.51 seconds in the 2016 Olympics. But when you remove the pseudo rallies, the average length of time per rally increases to 6.19 seconds. That of course makes sense because the very shortest rallies go away in this particular case. On the women's side, similarly, they're a little longer than men's rallies. The average rally length there was 7.25 seconds. And then for rallies without the pseudo rallies, you get rallies of 8.25 seconds. Now the Kuhn-Torres article stated some reasons for the increase in the length of each rally, which he said it was caused by the rally point scoring. First, this caused a significant decrease of the number of rallies per set, such that there's now a 2-point difference when a team loses a point instead of winning that point. Therefore, the team is putting more focus on winning every single point instead of only 1 point being at stake for any particular serve in side-out scoring. Now, the RPS system caused coaches and players to adapt by 1, focusing on defensive tactics, which included the introduction of the libero, and also the avoidance of faults, such that they don't just want to give away free points. It also included additional specialization of players, including, by extension, the inclusion of a second libero being added to rosters, plus change in training for 2.5 full rotations per set in sets 1 through 4 and 1.5 full rotations in set 5. And this is true because there are only 6 substitutions allowed per set, so Kuhn-Torres' additional conclusion was that the collateral prolongation of the rallies, together with the increased uncertainty of the outcomes, has undeniably made the game more spectacular and intriguing to watch. So let's just pause there for a minute and think for a moment about the Kuntura study. Does everything that they concluded make sense about the significant increase in rally duration? So I'd say yes, this does make sense in that there does seem to be more specialization amongst each of the positions, and also a significant change in that the defensive tactics really have picked up with the addition of the libero and that specialization. So everyone's just better at returning hard serves, and then better at blocking, and better at just getting rallies back over the net than they were before. So we're just seeing longer rallies. Even though players are also better at the offensive tactics, it's just more well known that more time has been spent on the defensive side. So we're just not getting spikes ending rallies rapidly. We're seeing good defensive strategies to get those blocks and get those digs and get the ball back over the net to extend those rallies. So to me, this makes sense that the rallies are just longer. So that's one thing we probably won't be able to fix, and I'm not even saying there's anything wrong with that. There have been rules added that have helped with defensive tactics. You can now hit the ball with any part of your body. You can go off of your head, you can hit it with your feet. Anything to keep that ball off the ground now is essentially allowed. So there's nothing wrong with that. I think that's great. That keeps the rallies going. It makes more spectacular saves, everything you want to see. You can jump over the scorer's table and save the ball. You know, just more exciting plays, which is really great for volleyball. So nothing wrong with that. I think we like to see the longer rallies, just a lot more excitement when play is actually taking place. So that's just great for the game. Nothing wrong with that. We do like to see longer rallies. But while we're seeing longer rallies, it does mean the length of the game is getting longer, and even to the point where it's too long of a game. How long should you even set for a volleyball match on TV? It certainly seems like anything over 2 hours might be too long, but certainly if we're getting now with an average 5-length match over 2.5 hours, that's certainly longer than we're looking for. As we know, baseball obviously put in a bunch of rules in the major leagues and minor leagues recently to reduce their length of game down from around 3 hours, and it's gotten down to a little over 2.5 hours. So that's a great change that they've made. I don't know if we can do all those types of things in volleyball, but there certainly have to be a few things around the edges that we can do. So let's talk about a couple of those rules that the FIVB has already put in place to try to do that. First, the serve clock has now been implemented, and we'll get to see that in the Olympics here for the first time in 2024. So the way the serve clock works, according to the FIVB rules and manuals on their website, there's a 15-second countdown that starts at the end of the rally that's basically broken up into two parts. First, the server is allocated 7 seconds to be ready to serve, and then 8 seconds to then complete the serve. If the server fails to serve at the end of those 15 seconds, a buzzer sounds, and it is considered a fault on the server, and then the point and the serve goes to the opposing team. As we saw with the pitch clock in Major League Baseball, the amount of time in between pitches greatly decreased, so it certainly goes to reason that the time between serves is also greatly going to be reduced. So we're certainly looking forward to seeing just how that plays out in the Paris Olympics. Secondly, the video challenge system. As we noted at the beginning, 2016 was the first time a video challenge system was implemented, and it didn't really have much effect on the length of matches in 2016, and in fact those matches seemed to go a little shorter than in 2012. But then the second time through for the video challenge system, the matches got significantly longer in all lanes of matches from 2016, and also broke the records from 2012, so perhaps everyone got a little bit less gun shy at using those challenges, and it took up more time. So who knows exactly the reason, but after 2 rounds, we've now seen the time increase by a lot now that we have the video challenge system. So the video challenge system works like this. The teams may request challenges for faults not called either 1 during play, aka mid-rally, by pressing a buzzer, or at the end of the rally, but if done for the end of the rally, it's only allowed for the last action of the rally. For those challenges taking place mid-rally, this is done at any moment during the rally, even if it is done to review a much earlier moment in the rally, such as the serve. This prompts the first referee to stop the action. For those challenges at the end of a rally, teams have 7 seconds, equal to that first block of time for the serve clock, in order to challenge that last action. Now, on top of the challenges themselves, if there's an automated in-out video challenge system, then in-out calls cannot be challenged and are made automatically. Now this works basically exactly the same as in tennis, where you see the ball floating in, you see at the end there's a mark left on the screen that indicates where the ball hit the ground, and you can easily see whether the ball was in or was out based on where that mark is. So this is the exact same system, and this is done automatically when it's in place. So you cannot challenge those calls, and they're done automatically after every single play. There are certain tournaments where that in-out video challenge system isn't used, but that's not going to be a factor for the Olympics. That in-out system will obviously be used in the Olympics, and has already been used in the Olympics. Now, permitted challenge requests, the types of challenges you can make are for block touch, are for net faults, antenna touches, foot faults, floor touches, and last touches. So pretty much anything you can think of, you can then challenge. Lastly, coaches are allowed unlimited challenges per set as long as they don't lose 2 of them in any set. Once you lose 2 challenges in a set, that team is no longer allowed to challenge any more times for the rest of that set. However, if you go to the next set, apparently you get 2 more challenges right back. You can challenge as many times as you want in a set until you've lost 2 challenges. At the very beginning, we noted one new change in the format for the 2024 Olympics. So, since 1972, the teams were split into 2 pools of 6, or for certain Olympics, pools of 4 or 5, and each team in that pool plays each other team once in a round-robin style. New for 2024, the teams will be split into 3 pools of 4 teams each, with each team only playing 3 matches. It'll still be a round-robin format, they'll still play each team 1 time. Now you're only being given 3 matches guaranteed instead of 5 matches. Not sure why they did that. However, this new system has the top 2 teams in each pool automatically advance to the quarterfinals, and then the top 2 of 3 third place teams will also qualify based on the points that they've accumulated during pool play. And there's a preset list of tiebreakers on how these 2 out of 3 teams are going to be determined to allow to advance. I'm sure there will be plenty of tiebreakers in this system for these third places, so those tiebreakers will certainly be necessary, but not really a concern for us today. Of course, then the knockout rounds will proceed as usual. The top 8 teams are into the quarterfinals. You lose once and you're out. Of course, there is a bronze medal game for the Olympics. Let's turn our attention back to the points scored in each set and how that affects the mathematics of volleyball, which was coined in Ken Sheriff's blog, where he used dynamic programming and Pascal's triangle to come up with 2 different mathematical computations for volleyball. The first of which is this very nice and colorful green and pink, we'll call it pink, this very nice green and pink graph showing the number of points scored by each team in any given set. And it shows the probability of the team on the left, how likely they are to win that particular set. Now, the one thing that Sheriff had to do here is that he assumed that both of the teams participating in the match are of equal skills, such that anytime there is a tie score, that both teams have a 50-50 chance of winning. It also does not assume anything about which side is serving at that particular moment. So the serving side and the receiving side both have a 50-50 shot there. What Sheriff noted here was that the odds fall away from 50% pretty rapidly as you move away from a tied score, and that points matter a lot more near the end of the game than they do at the beginning. And the example that he gave was 2 different match points where one team was down by 6 points. When that team was losing 24-18, they only had a 1% chance of winning. But when they lost the first 6 points and were down 6-0, they still had an 18% chance of winning. Obviously, that does make a lot of sense. But secondly, and possibly more importantly for our context, is that he also measured how important is the next point. And this is in a less colorful but nice yellow and gray box, such that when you're more in yellow, the points matter more, or they even go to orange and red if they become very important. And the less important they are, they're more in the gray zone. The other way to put this is how much more likely is the team to win the match if they win that very next point versus they lose that point. So the example that he gave was that the score is 18-12. Team 1, the team with 18 points, has a 92% chance to win from that prior table, the pink and green one. If they win the next point, their odds increase to 95%, but if they lose the next point, they only have an 88% chance to win. Therefore, there is a 7-point difference based on the outcome of the next point. So the importance of that point is 7%. And again, that makes intuitive sense, but it's great to see in a graph. So here, if a team is winning by a lot, 1 point doesn't make much difference to them. But if the score is close, each point counts by a lot more. In addition, each point also counts by a lot more near the end of the game than it does at the beginning of the game. Here at the very beginning, he shows the very first point in the match, when the score is 0-0, makes an 11% difference. But a point when the score is tied 23-23 makes a 50% difference. Obviously, just huge difference once we get to the end of a set. So before we switch topics again, let's just pause here for a moment. Let's talk about that. Points at the beginning of a set, generally not nearly as important, and points where the score discrepancy is a lot less important. So for our purposes here, basically it's a good idea to try to maximize the times when points matter more and minimize the times where points matter less. So we'll get back to that eventually. Our next topic, we're going to compare volleyball to a whole slew of other sports. And we're going to do this for a very specific reason, which we'll get to at the end. But first, let's compare them to other Olympic sports that are played in either sets or rounds. First, our good friends at beach volleyball. No, we haven't talked about beach volleyball here. We've only been focusing on indoor volleyball, but we certainly love beach volleyball just as much, or, you know, maybe even a little more than indoor volleyball. How can you not love beach volleyball? It's just so exciting. If you guys got two people running around out in the sand, trying to save points all the time, it's really a beautiful thing when it all comes together and they get a nice play. So, and also we have had some great success on beach volleyball that hopefully we can also replicate into the next era. So for beach volleyball, it's played in a best of 3 sets format, where sets 1 and 2 are played to 21, and then the third set is played to 15, and of course, win each set by 2. But turning away from these two Olympic types of volleyball, let's talk about other sports played in sets and rounds. Archery. There are a couple different formats here, one for individual, one for team, and one for mixed team. So for individual archery, it's the first to 6 points played in up to 5 sets of 3 arrows each. Now the thing here with archery that we really want to dig into a little bit deeper than the other sports here is that it is played in up to 5 sets, but it's not just the best 3 of 5 sets. What you have in archery is that if you win a set, you get 2 points and the loser gets 0 points. But if there is a tie in any set, there's not an immediate tiebreaker and both participants both get 1 point each for that set. So it's certainly possible you could tie all 5 sets, or you could win 2 and lose 2, any combination to get to exactly 5 points after 5 sets, very likely. So then only at that point do we have a tiebreaker at the end of 5 full sets. If neither individual has 6 points, each archer gets 1 shot to determine a winner. Now, if each archer gets a shot that's exactly worth the same number of points, possibly 10 points each, the one that happens to be closest to the center wins the match. Of course, that's just individual. We also have team archery. This is first to 5 points in up to 4 sets of 6 arrows each, 2 each per archer on a 3-man or 3-woman team. And then the tiebreaker at the end is similar. Each archer gets exactly 1 shot. If there's a tie amongst all 3 players each, when those points are added up, then whichever arrow is the closest to the center, that is your winner. Then for mixed team, it is only 4 arrows each and only 2 per archer, but basically played the same way. More quickly, after archery, let's go into several other sports played in sets or rounds. Badminton is a best-of-3 format. You play to 21 in each set, and you have to win by 2 until you get all the way to 30 points, such that a set has to end at 30, so a 30 to 29 will win you a set. For boxing, it changed recently such that it's now most points under the 10-point must scoring that you see in pro boxing after 3 3-minute rounds or by a knockout or technical knockout. And the judges then determine a winner if the score is tied after the 3 rounds. For fencing, it is first to 15 points or the most points after 3 3-minute rounds. Now granted, in 2020 there was not a single match that did not reach 15 points in any of the 3 disciplines, so we don't really have to worry about the 3 3-minute rounds or the tiebreaker, which is a 1-minute sudden death. It's determined by a predetermined draw winner, which takes place before the match even starts, so one person knows they're gonna lose a tiebreaker if there's no scoring after that sudden death. Nonetheless, we didn't have to get to that point because every single match got to 15 points, so that's very rarely used. Golf, it's the same as any golf tournament as you would expect. It's the low score after 4 rounds, and then the tiebreaker is a 1-hole playoff, and then you just repeat 1 hole as the playoff if you keep getting ties. For table tennis, there are 3 different events. Just like in archery, there's singles, there's team table tennis, and then there's a mixed doubles. For singles and mixed doubles, you play a best of 7, and the games are to 11 with a win by 2 format. For team table tennis, it's a best of 5. Again, the games are to 11. Again, you have to win by 2. And there are 3 players on the team and 1 player in reserve. Next, Taekwondo is a best of 3 2-minute rounds, and the most points in each round wins the point. This is brand new for 2024. Previously, you added the points up amongst the 3 rounds, and then you would have some tiebreakers, but this is no longer needed as you just have 1 point given in each of the rounds. Now, there is still a tiebreaker in a given round, such that if the points are, say, 2-2 at the end of a round, then you have to go to the judges, and there's tiebreaker criterion to break the tie within a round. However, for a match, there's no tiebreaker needed. Next, tennis. It's played just as you would see on the ATP and WTA tours. You have singles, you have doubles, and you have mixed doubles. For singles, you're still playing a best of 3 sets. There's no best of 5 for men's like you will see in the majors. Instead, everything is now a best of 3 sets for both men and women, and you get your standard 7-point tiebreaker at the end of a set. For doubles and mixed doubles, however, if it's 1-1 after 2 sets, instead of playing a standard 3rd set, there is a 10-point tiebreaker used. And they apparently use this because they didn't want to overload any person who might be playing in singles, doubles, and mixed doubles. But I will note that the last time someone medaled in all 3 events for the men was in 1924, and for the women was 1920. So the 10-point tiebreaker does seem to be a bit of a cop-out for doubles and mixed doubles. I can say from experience, I went to the finals of the Miami Open 2 times, and saw the finals of the men's doubles, and both times I went, they played a 3rd set 10-point tiebreaker. It just seemed strange to end it so abruptly. I didn't really like that. I certainly thought the gentlemen had enough energy left in them to play a full set. I don't know, maybe they only had that energy because they only played these 10-set tiebreakers the whole way through. I don't know. I doubt it. It seems silly to me. I don't want to have to do a whole video on 10-point tiebreakers for 3rd sets in doubles and mixed doubles matches for tennis. That said, we'll say that this particular event, these 10-point tiebreakers, is the most similar to volleyball, where the fifth set is reduced in points. So volleyball and tennis, you two are a little bit strange compared to everybody else. Lastly, for the Summer Olympics, wrestling, we have both Greco-Roman and freestyle. We have 2 rounds, 3-point rounds. Now, the points are added together here, so it's not just 1 point in a round. You do get your total points put together, but I just wanted to note this because there's a predetermined list of tiebreaker criteria used to break a tie. For non-Olympic sports, I looked at a whole bunch of other sports. Racket sports first. In racquetball, you play best of 3 games. It's a race to 15 with side-out scoring, and you have to win by 2 in each set. For squash, it's a best of 5 games where you race to 11 with rally scoring and you have to win by 2. Pickleball, everyone's new favorite sport all of a sudden, it's a best of 3 with a race to 11 with side out scoring, win by 2. I did see just last month in May of 2024 that they now will allow some matches to go to rally scoring, but the primary way will still be side-out scoring. And lastly, in paddle, it's a best of 3 games, and it uses the same scoring as regular tennis. For cue sports, billiards. The Billiards World Championship is a timed event, so several games, an indeterminate number of games, are played in one session until time runs out, and the player with the most points at the end of the session wins. What I want to note here, however, is that the further you get in the tournament, these sessions get longer. They do not get shorter, they get longer. The finals was 6 hours, whereas the very first rounds, I believe, were 90 minutes. So it's a huge disparity in the amount of time played to determine the winner once you get close to the end. Then in snooker, the World Snooker Championship, in the first round, it's a best of 19 games played over 2 sessions. Then once you advance to the second and third rounds, and then the quarterfinals, you play a best of 25 games over 3 sessions. When you get to the semifinals, you increase the number of games to a best of 33 games played over 4 sessions. And finally, once you get to the finals, you increase yet again best of 35 games played over 4 sessions. You really have to do a lot of work to win the snooker championship. We have bowling, the IBF World Championship. In the first and second round, it's a round robin format, but I note it here because in the semifinals and the finals, you do play a best of 3 games. Now, if you have a tie within a single game, you go to a 2-frame roll-off, and in particular the 9th and 10th frame, because you get that extra third ball in the 10th frames. So it is a 9th and 10th frame roll-off as your tiebreaker in a game. For bocce, you play to 12 points or 8 ends, somewhat similar to archery, where it can go either way. The tiebreaker after 8 ends is just playing an additional end. For darts, the PDC World Championship is a straight-in double-out format to 501 in each leg. Yes, there's a lot of different terminology there that we're not going to worry about here today, maybe at some point in the future, but it's a best of 3 legs per set in the PDC World Championship. And then in the first and second rounds, you play a best of 5 sets, so that's up to 15 legs there that you could be playing. In the third and fourth rounds, you go to a best of 7 sets, quarterfinals, best of 9 sets, semis, best of 11 sets, and the finals, best of 13 sets. Again, the further you get in the tournament, you go up in the number of sets that you play instead of go down in the amount of time. And beginning in the second round, the final set in a set must be won by 2 legs, and that's only for the final set. Not every single set has to be won by 2, just that final set. Lastly, I did try to look at Winter Olympics here, but I could not find any that were played in rounds or sets similar to volleyball or similar to tennis. The only thing somewhat similar was curling, but that, like a cornhole, for example, you just get the number of points, how many rocks are closest to the center there, so you can have a set number of points. You don't necessarily get 1 point per round, more like in baseball or softball, where you can score as many runs in any given inning. So nothing we needed to directly compare it to. So again, let's pause here for a moment before we move on. So the point of this whole section was to show how different volleyball is from a whole bunch of other sports, where volleyball is basically by itself, other than the doubles and mixed doubles for tennis, that the 5th and deciding set is the shortest of all sets, whereas in these other sports, they're either exactly the same or even longer in the case of, say, darts or snooker, for example. We really want to point out just how strange volleyball happens to be, but I guess they're brothers or sisters in arms with tennis, with the doubles and mixed doubles format also being shorter with that 10-point tiebreaker. Third set. Next, another thing to take into consideration was injuries. Now, the FIVB had an injury surveillance system established in 2010. It was modeled after the IOC's protocols and was designed to provide information about the rate and pattern of injuries in FIVB competitions. This was a 4-year study based on 32 major FIVB events. 23 were senior level, 9 were junior level between September of 2010 and November of 2014. So this did include the 2012 Olympics. So amongst all of these volleyball events, 440 injuries were reported, 275 of which happened during matches, and 165 matches happened during training, practices, weightlifting, anything like that. Now, the incidence of match injuries was 10.7 per 1,000 player hours, and they did find it to be greater for senior players than for junior players, but there was no difference between genders. The incidence of time loss injuries during match play was 3.8 per 1,000 player hours, or 32.5% of all injuries caused some lost time of play. In this particular case, there was an even greater difference between senior players and junior players. There was again no difference shown between males and females, and the incidence of injury was greater for middle blockers than for the other players on the court. Now let's look at injury severity. Only 10 out of these 440 reported injuries were expected to cause an absence of greater than 4 weeks. So if you were out for a month or more, you were considered a severe injury for this particular study, and only 10 of those 440 showed players out for at least 4 weeks. 8 of these 10 injuries happened during match plays, so this equated to an incidence of 0.3 severe injuries per 1,000 player hours. The injury pattern, probably as you would guess, ankle injuries led the way at 25.9%, knee at 15.2%, fingers or thumbs at 10.7%, and then lumbar or lower back at 8.9%. The injury types, joint sprains led the way at 32.5%, followed by muscle strains at 14.1%, and finally contusions at 12.7%. And an ankle sprain was the most frequent diagnosis of all injuries at 19.8%. Now, the injury causes, there are only 3 particular types here. Contact injuries, 23.0%, overuse injuries, 20.7%, and then non-contact injuries at 17.3%. Now, match timing was done to see if maybe more injuries occurred late in the match or early in the match. As you can see here, there's not a whole lot of a difference here. Slightly more in set 2 than any other time throughout the match. So it varied from 7.7 in the first set to 9.8 in the second set. And we hovered around that 9 injuries per 1,000 match hours from sets 2 to 5. So the conclusions from this study showed total injury incidence of 10.7 per 1,000 player hours was substantially lower than reported in other team sports at the elite level. So again, I'm not the statistician here, but these folks were able to declare that this was substantially lower, statistically significant enough to be considered substantial. Across all age and sex groups, most injuries were minimal to mild, with subsequent time loss from training and or match play of 0 to 2 days. And there were only 0.3 severe injuries per 1,000 player hours, which was substantially lower, again using that substantially, lower than other major team sports like soccer, handball, or ice hockey. Particularly in the 2012 Olympics, there were 20 out of 288 players, or 6.9%, that had injuries, and only 7 of them, or 2.4%, led to time loss of 1 or more days, and only 3, or 1%, led to time loss of 7+ days. and 11 out of these 20 were during competition, and 9 out of 20 were during training. The study did show that senior players have a greater injury incidence than junior players, which they attributed to 1, match intensity, 2, their saturated year-round calendars of playing, and 3, little time for them to prepare and recover from these injuries. And the most common injury situation occurred when a blocker lands on the foot of an opposing attacker or on one of their teammates close to the net. So the whole point of bringing up this study was, do we need to worry about injuries if we play longer, if they occur later in matches, or are we not going to necessarily worry about injuries? And based on this study, it's safe to say that we don't have to worry about injuries affecting how we're going to make any changes to the game to try to improve the length of these matches. So, as we always do here at the SportsZu, we wanted to come up with a way to improve Olympic volleyball. Our goal here in this case, when I came in, was to make the 5th set 25 points, which when I came in, I said, this is not going to be a big change. It's only 20 points extra added to the game. Surely rally scoring has dropped the lengths of these matches down. We're adding 20 potential points to the match is not going to make a particular difference. And the reason for this was that during regulation play, not overtimes, not tiebreakers, only volleyball, and that doubles tennis that we talked about reduced the length of play during the most critical part of the game, being that final set. Every other sport kept it the same or actually increased the amount of time left to finish the game in the most critical moments. So I simply wanted to get rid of that and make the 5th set equal to everything else. But reality got in the way. The game has increased in length by too much already, so adding these 20 points without doing anything else was simply not the way to go. So the issue became, how do we reduce the length of the game to achieve the goal of getting to those 25 points? We're going to do this in 2 steps. So part 1, let's talk about those time-saving devices, which we talked about earlier. First, the serve clock. It may fix this problem already by itself. Now we know, as we talked about earlier, we now are going to have just 15 seconds to have a serve. By just having 15 seconds, these rallies could be a lot quicker. We saw that the time between 2 serves ended up being 35.3 seconds for both men's and women's. If we now have rallies that say take 8 seconds, then we have 15 seconds in between, that leaves us with just 23 seconds. Maybe there's a little bit of buffer zone, but we might just have only 25 or so seconds between serves instead of 32.5. That's going to cut out a lot of time in these matches if done properly. So hopefully, and maybe, that's going to fix everything already and we'll be able to achieve our goal. However, let's also talk about the video challenge system. It has both helped and hurt the amount of time. Obviously, it has helped in that the in-out video challenge system is used. We will see that these challenges are done automatically. Those marks on the screen pop up really quickly. You almost lose no time at all. And if it's not close, they're not going to take any extra time to review it. If it is close, it's going to pop up within a matter of seconds and will keep the game rolling. The scoring has to be adjusted. However, other than that, oh boy, I think we have really increased the amount of time for challenges. This is bad. 2 unsuccessful challenges in a set results in a team being unable to request more challenges for the remainder of the set. So unlike American football, where if you use up those 2 challenges, you're done for the entire game. If you use them both in the first quarter and lose them, you're done. Here, you lose 2 in the first set, you're coming right back with 2 more in the second, third, fourth, and fifth sets. That's a lot of challenges that you get to lose throughout a match before you don't have any more challenges. So that's a big problem. People can go crazy with these challenges. Yes, we want to get calls right. That's very important. But from what I noticed from watching a lot of ACC women's volleyball the last several years, we're going to break through very soon. Final Four is not going to be the end for this team. We're going to the championship. We're going to win that national championship very soon. But in a lot of these challenges, that ball is going really fast, and it's really hard to tell if you've touched the net or if the ball has touched your fingers. It's just very difficult. These challenges take way too long. The screen's just too blurry. It makes it really hard. It's just not that efficient of a system. So getting all of those challenges, eating up all that much time, I think is really slowing down this game. I have to think that is really one of the main causes that we jumped up so much in 2020 for the length of the games, as maybe in 2016, teams weren't quite sure how to use their challenges, but by 2020, they did, and they challenged a lot more often, and it caused some major delays. Not sure, just speculating a little bit there. So putting those two things together, our immediate change to the video challenge system. First, we're going to change it just the way it is in the NFL. Once you've lost your 2 challenges, that's it, you're done for the game. Secondly, in each set, challenges are only going to be permitted after the leading team is within 5 points of winning the set. So in this case, no challenges all the way until someone gets to 20 points. Once the leading teams hit 20 points, both teams can then challenge all the way until the end of the set. Why we're doing it this way, let's think of NCAA college basketball for a minute. There are no challenges allowed until the last 2 minutes of the half for men's basketball. So once you're going throughout the game, you want to keep the game flowing, keep it moving. Things generally even out throughout the length of a game for basketball, such that, the number of missed calls are going to be fairly even throughout the first 18 minutes of a half. So there's no challenges that are allowed in those first 18 minutes. Once we get to the last 2 minutes, game is at its most critical juncture. You want to make sure you get the calls right, so then challenges are allowed. Here, we're basically doing the same thing here for volleyball. We're going to assume the calls are pretty even throughout the length of the match, but once we get to those critical juncets of each set that we talked about from the mathematics of volleyball, then we want to be able to challenge each play specifically. So 2 unsuccessful challenges for the whole match, but you're only allowed to challenge within those last 5 points of each set. Secondly, we need to talk about stoppages in play that we talked about during the Kuhn-Torres et al. Article. So there we said all matches were played with the same regulations from 2000 to 2012. There were no changes in breaks, the timeouts always remained the same, the technical timeouts always remained the same, the time between sets remained the same. So what do we want to do with all of those? Those still haven't changed, so we're going to change those some here. Technical timeouts, we're going to reduce them from 2 per set to 1 per set, such that the technical timeout will be done after the leading team has achieved at least 50 points in the set, such that in sets 1 through 4, it's when the leading team gets to 13 of the 25 points needed. Secondly, team timeouts are going to be changed, not necessarily reduced, but changed from 2 30-second timeouts per set to 1 60-second timeout per set. So why are we doing these changes? First, as to the technical timeouts, the thing here is in the Olympics, volleyball matches are not necessarily shown in their entirety very often on any of the NBC channels here in America. So what we have now is the streaming. You go to your Peacock, for example, and you watch a full volleyball match from start to finish there. Yes, you only have that 1 technical timeout now in the middle, but you're not going to have those, full commercials like you're going to have on NBC or USA Network, for example, showing those matches. So the timeouts and the commercial breaks are not going to be needed as much in the Olympics. Now, for team timeouts, what we're doing here, the problem is not the 2 30-second timeouts versus 1 60-second timeouts. That's the same amount of timeout. The problem is the time once you call the timeout to where you get to your huddle on the sideline, and then after the allotted period is over, then going back onto the court and taking time, the ref has to go over, blow the whistle, get everybody back over onto the court, and then you finally start up the play. So it's the time between the timeouts, not actually the timeout time itself, that's causing the delay. So that is part one. Part two is, timeouts usually are to break up the momentum, stop a hot server from just keep going with the momentum. But, that's actually a good thing that we want to see. We want to see somebody get hot, make a lot of great plays in a row. That's pretty exciting when you get those in volleyball. It doesn't happen that often where you just roll off 8 to 10 straight serves. So we want to see that happen if it can. And if you have less opportunities to call a timeout, there's a better chance of that happening. So we're going to speed up the play in that way. And if you do have a hot server that's getting a few aces in one go round, that's going to cut down on the time, which is also the key goal here. So let's move on to proposal part two. If part one does not do enough to shorten the match length or improve viewer engagement, improve the audience, or improve viewer engagement, the TV ratings or whatnot, we're also then going to change the set lanes. Yes, we're going to dive deep into this. So, set 1 through 3 shall be reduced from 25 points to 20 points. Oh no, we can't move off of those 20 points. What? Are you kidding me? No. 25 is not a sacred number of points in a set for volleyball. If anything, it's 15 points in a set that was played all the way back from the early 1900s. I think maybe in the 1800s when the game first started, they might have used a different number for a while. But since the early 1900s, it was pretty much set at 15 points per set all the way until it was changed in 1999. So I think it is safe to say 25 points is not a number that anyone should go crazy over. So sets 1 through 3, we're taking off 5 points from each of those sets. We're going to 20 points only in sets 1 through 3. So what this does, it reduces all matches by 15 points per team, and it eliminates the least important points in these sets. Do you really need to see these 10 extra points at the very beginning of the game, the very beginning of the second set, and the very beginning of the third set? Probably not. You're just kind of getting into the game at the beginning of the first set, or you're just kind of resetting after the first set, getting into the second set, resetting after the second set into the third set. So these points of the match, really not that critical, which we comparatively saw on the mathematics of volleyball charts. So it plays out that way. These are not critical points. We're getting rid of them. So after that, we go to set 4. It's going to remain at 25 points. So if we have a close match, such that it's 2-1, obviously, and the match is going to the fourth set, then we're going to say, we need to go into this a little bit further. We're going to stay at our 25 points that we have right now. Then set 5, we're increasing from the 15 points to the 25 points. So sets 4 and 5 are both going to be 25 points. These are the critical sets. They're going to 25 points. So a match that ends with 5 sets is only going to have 5 less total points per team than it does now. It's just those points are reallocated from the beginning of the match to the end of the match. We're removing 15 points from sets 1 through 3. We're adding 10 points to set 5. So it's only a net of minus 5 points per team. And the points are added to the 5th and most important set. They will be more interesting and exciting to the audience to watch than those played earlier in the sets. Like we talked about, you're just kind of easing into things at the beginning of sets 1 through 3. By the time you get to sets 4 and 5, you're in this match, you're excited for it, it's going at full bore, you want to keep going. We don't want to see the 5th set get shortened to 15 points. It's just really bad. You just don't have that time to make the comebacks either in the 15-point matches. That's really the most frustrating thing. You get down by a few points in that 5th set, you're almost done. If it's 5-0, you basically have no chance. At least that's what it feels like. So we want to kind of eliminate that. We saw if you're down 6-0 in a 25-set match, you still have an 18% chance to come back. That's not nothing. You've got a chance. So that is something we want to maintain for the 5th set. So that's another reason why we're going back to 25 points for the 5th set. So when we look at it cumulatively, only sets 1 through 3 are guaranteed to be played. So the total time amongst all matches will be reduced, which is an overall positive, say, in an Olympic setting where you're going to see many matches played back to back. So you know you're not going to be sitting there for 2.5 hours in the very first match that maybe you don't care about the two teams playing there, and you're just waiting for, say, the US to play in match number 3 of the day. So whether you have 3-set matches or 5-set matches, you're theoretically waiting a little less time to get to the match you want to see in match 3 in that particular day. So all in all, we think that the total time spent will be better and easier for everyone in an Olympic-like setting. So there you have it, Zoo Crew. Let me know what you think in the comments. So until our next Olympic-specific video, this has been the SportsZu. Yes, Master Cat, I have talked about pit volleyball in this video. Thank you, Master Cat. Hail to pit.